Children should be safe and protected.
You will feel that there's absolutely no way out for you.
They deserve to have opportunities for the future.
They dominate every aspect of your life.
Sadly, this isn't always the case.
They can also fear for their lives, so they're unable to sleep as they're always needing to watch their back.
Young people can become victims of county lines.
My name's Daljeet Dagan. I'm a programme manager with Barnardo Scotland. So county line is a term used to describe gangs and organised criminal networks involved in exporting illegal drugs into one or more importing areas, and that's within Scotland or wider across the UK, using a dedicated mobile phone line or other form of deal line. A burner phone is usually what's used, and a burner phone is a cheap prepaid mobile phone that can be destroyed or discarded when no longer required. They are often used to evade detection by authorities.
It's shocking. Children in Scotland are being lured into criminal activity. This usually involves the transportation of drugs. Young people aged 14 to 17 are most likely to be targeted. However, children as young as 11 have been exploited, and they are immediately exposed to a world of violence and danger. There are many other consequences.
It can affect young people in lots of different ways. It can affect their physical health, it can affect their emotional well-being. They can feel depressed, feel anxious, feel scared. They can even want to self-harm. Sometimes young people can start to use substances to cope, or sometimes increase their substances. They can also become disengaged from education, from employment, from training, and that also affects their future. They can also become involved in offending, and then becoming part of the criminal justice system also has an impact upon their future, and it can also affect their interpersonal relationships, either with peers as well as family members as well. So child criminal exploitation affects boys and girls aged under the age of 18 from any social, ethnic and economic background. This is an issue of abuse and not a lifestyle choice, and the children who are criminally exploited are victims who require support and protection. Offenders will use various tactics to groom children, such as giving them money, drugs, clothing, and even during COVID we heard of a young person who actually got a haircut, and that was so significant, particularly during a period where all the barbers and hairdressers were actually closed. And these are the tactics that offenders are using in order to get a child or a young person to comply. However, what we need to acknowledge is that there is an imbalance of power here that enables the perpetrator to coerce, control, manipulate and deceive you. The children and young people involved do not recognise themselves as victims, and it is important to remember that this is not a choice on the part of the child. Sometimes they have no alternative.
As time goes by, involvement in county lines starts to affect the rest of the family.
So county lines harms family relationships. Parents can feel guilty for not noticing or for not acting sooner to protect their child. They might be angry with one another, might feel jealous of the attention that a child is getting, and also siblings can sometimes feel jealous of the attention that their sibling is getting. Sometimes parents and siblings can also feel guilty about not spotting the signs or not stopping something if they were aware of it. There are many different ways in which family relationships are harmed significantly, and we need to all support children as well as the families to try and heal family relationships.
There's a pattern. Once recruited, a child will usually see an escalation in what they are expected to do.
So we're aware of some cases where young people's tenancies have been taken over by organised crime groups, either to store drugs, to deal drugs, or to store weapons, where young people have been asked to store weapons, where young people have been asked to occupy abandoned buildings and stay, often without access to food, without water or even toilet facilities, and keep watch or actually await people who might be coming to collect parcels, for instance.
From day one, victims are trapped in county lines.
These perpetrators are grooming you. As part of the grooming process, they will isolate you from all your friends, all your family, and anyone else who has supported you, so that you become completely indebted to them. They dominate every aspect of your life. They will determine who you can talk to, sometimes even where you live, how often you go home if you're living at home, but they will completely control every aspect of your life, and you will feel that there's absolutely no way out for you, so it becomes increasingly difficult to reach out. So part of the grooming process will also include trying to manipulate you or deceive you into introducing other people. It will come across as if you want to bring your friend along, but actually what they're doing is that They're manipulating you into recruiting other young people so that they've got more young people who can be actively involved in organised crime. And sometimes you might also get a fee for introducing a pal. The ultimate thing that can happen is sometimes, unfortunately, young people can be found dead. They can be harmed in significant ways. They can become addicted to drugs. They can also fear for their lives, so they're unable to sleep, they're unable to relax, as they're always needing to watch their back. They could also become disengaged from family and friends in an attempt to keep them safe.
So why do gangs exploit children?
Serious organised crime groups are taking advantage of the fact that the consequences for children will potentially be significantly lower than what they might be for themselves or another adult. If somebody who's in a serious and organised crime gang and as an adult was to commit any of these offences, they would get to jail, whereas if you're a child, and particularly a child under the age of 16, you're much more likely to be dealt with in a supportive and protective manner rather than being punished. And that's why serious and organised crime gangs exploit and coerce children, because they know that those children are not going to be prosecuted.
The practice of recruiting children into a life of crime is cowardly.
There are some specific vulnerabilities, such as children and young people with additional support needs, or children and young people who might already have some issues with drugs and alcohol. Children where there's less supervision by an adult, or if that adult is being controlled by other people because they might have their own issues in terms of mental health or addiction issues. It could be parents who are working from home, therefore they're not as well sighted in terms of what's happening with their child. It could be children where there's no one paying attention to what devices they're using because there's less familiarity with iPods and iPads and laptops in terms of young people's use of social media.
It's strange, but true. Being recruited can initially be exciting to a child who may be neglected and vulnerable.
Children may feel that they have gained friends or family and that these people care for them. The child may be receiving money or rewards that they have not had access to previously, or the money may be supporting their family to cover basic needs such as food. The child or young person may feel a sense of status and power that they haven't had before.
Criminals aren't just exploiting young people. The cost of living has presented gangs with opportunities.
I think when you watch the news every day or read the papers, what you're seeing is the cost of living is having a huge impact in terms of food prices, in terms of rental and mortgage, for instance, as well. And what that means is that it's becoming increasingly difficult for people to manage on the disposable income that they have. It becomes much easier for organised crime groups to exploit those families. Storing drugs or storing weapons might seem like a less harmful proposition for them than going out and housebreaking. It might be the only way that they can actually put food on the table.
So, how do we protect children from being victims of county lines?
Your child might be distressed, they might be withdrawn or feeling and looking tired, they might be secretive, they might have an excessive number of texts or phone messages, they might have more than one phone, they might be regularly checking their phone, they might be receiving calls and messages throughout the night, they might become disengaged or excluded from education, they might be picking up charges, they might be getting picked up with drugs on their person, they might be getting picked up with other forms of drug paraphernalia like scales, they could be carrying weapons, they could be, your child could have been physically assaulted, they might have physical injuries, they might be carrying weapons, they might go missing, and they might end up in areas where they have no connection, they might have barricades in their room, they might be changing their friendship groups as often as you and I might change our socks and tights.
Through her work with Bernardo's, Haljit is experienced in communication with vulnerable young people. Engaging with a child of concern requires patience and sensitivity.
First off, you need to consider who will be best placed to speak to the child. If you have concerns about a child, then you're the best person. It's always better to prepare for a conversation with a child. Regardless of time, make sure it takes place with as much privacy as possible. If you've arranged a conversation because of concerns about either your child or another child's behaviour, it can be useful to use cues such as a child's behaviour. For example, you can say things like, I have noticed that you've been very quiet lately. I have noticed that you don't seem yourself. You need to show that you're listening and you need to give the child time. You can use phrases such as I am here for you, or offer alternative times to allow them to open up when it's comfortable for them, such as I'm going to come and see you again next week and we can talk a bit more about this if you would like to. During your first conversation with a child, your primary concern must always be to ensure their safety and well-being. Ask enough questions to work out where the child is currently safe, then move carefully towards the end of your conversation. It can feel difficult to navigate the fine line between respecting that child's confidentiality and meeting your safeguarding responsibilities. You need to remain open, calm, honest and transparent about the actions you will need to take, while also acknowledging the child's worries and finding ways of addressing these. Ending a conversation can be difficult. It is important to end it in a way that lets them know that they can come back to you. It is a very powerful motivator for young people to disclose if an adult takes notice of their struggles and asks about them.
Haljit also has advice for you as a young person at risk.
Often what I would say to young people is think about your helping hand. Think about your 5 safe people. And they can be different for different people. But that might be a parent, it might be a friend, it might be a school teacher, it might be a youth worker. It might be your next door neighbour. But you will have 5 safe people that you'll be able to identify. And that's what you think about. Don't think about that you're a grass. What you need to think about is actually you could be saving somebody's life here.
If you have information about who is exploiting a child or vulnerable adult, or is involved in the production and sale of drugs, there are safe ways to pass this on. Remember, in an emergency, always call 999. You can always make a call to Police Scotland on 101, or contact Fearless. When you call Fearless or supply information online, it's 100% anonymous. Your phone number and IP address cannot be traced. It won't even show up on your bill. 0800 555 111 or fearless.org.
It's really important that together we try and raise awareness and make sure that people understand that our children are being exploited and abused and actually are not criminals.
0800 555 111 or fearless.org.